as a society, we can see that being in a monogamous relationship, you do get to build a whole another level of depth that you will not experience in a polyamorous relationship, where men naturally are wanting to be protected and just like want that man, or like masculine man, whatever that looks like, to be able to feel protected and safe. In our experience, we have never seen a successful, long-term, committed, open relationship.
But do you think that there's a real connection between sort of marketing and dating nowadays? Do you think we've become more like products that we're trying to sell to people? Because I love that comprehension of it, for sure. I don't think I've ever necessarily looked at it that way. However, with you asking that question, I'm like, yeah, it definitely is. We live in our consumer-based world. We are constantly being sold to. We are constantly selling ourselves to people as well. Whether it's we're selling ourselves, we're selling ourselves to our friends, for our relationships, things like that. And so I think the thing with marketing was the thing that really interested me, as well as my partner, was understanding human psychology and human behavior. And so that's a really big thing, obviously, in relationships, and also a massive thing within marketing as well, like understanding how people behave and their buying behaviors, as well as when you look at a relationship, people's behavior on how they show up and why they show up in a certain way, and working on their triggers of why someone would want to, for example, buy skincare products if they have an insecurity about their skin, or why they have an insecurity about a different situation and they attract a partner in regards to that. That helps them not internalize those qualities, if that makes sense. That makes sense, yeah. I'm just trying to formulate this question that I've got in a way that makes sense, so it's not just a blur. Okay, no, that's
you
fine.
Can just ask it, and then I can.
No, it's not right. No, because it doesn't make any sense. So we'll get to it later. What is you? Just because you mentioned dating apps, I just want to bring them up quickly. What is the sort of state of dating apps in Australia? Are people still using them?
It's such an interesting thing, and people are obviously still on dating apps. There's dating apps that people identify as different apps. Like, for example, Tinder. They say you wouldn't go on Tinder to find a relationship. It's more of a hookup culture app. However, in saying that, there was a new study that came out a couple months ago saying that there's a lot less women signing up for dating apps these days. And I think the ratio was already 3-1 for so there's 3 men. There's 1 woman for every 3 men that were on a dating app, and 90% of the men were rejected. Like if a guy wanted to match with a girl, 90% of them would be rejected, and only, if lucky, 10% would be a match for the other person. So the fact that there's even more women who are off dating apps now, they say that the statistics are going to go down. However, that's only a new statistic that's come out. So dating apps they still are effective because people are going on there to intentionally meet other people. And you do hear a lot more from both men and women that they're not wanting to find their forever person on a dating app. They're wanting to still have that interaction in person, or meet their forever person in the shops, or at the park, or at the beach, or something like that. But in saying that, people are still on dating apps. Women are more so on dating apps for validation rather than to actually meet someone. So it is really a hit and miss, for sure. But I do say, if you are wanting to find someone, jumping on a dating app, there's no harm in that, as long as you're still open to people approaching you in person as well.
Yeah, I would say if you're a man, though, I would say don't do dating apps, because they're just going to decrease your confidence. And I really think that dating apps are on the way out. they know that they're dying and they're clinging to the last breath that they can possibly get, which is why they're putting all these paywalls behind everything, all these premium packages that are just completely sort of gratuitous and over the top and unnecessary. And it's because they know that basically, I think they've sort of hit the point where they're like, we know what we're doing is kind of wrong and it doesn't work, but let's try and make as much money out of it as possible before we go under, before the whole entity goes under. And I don't know if something like that would ever go under, because what's so difficult about sort of society is once something becomes sort of instantiated in a culture, the roots go so deep into it that it takes a really long time for these roots to be pulled up. So obviously, because the medium of a dating app is akin to sort of this transactional, I'm pretty sure there's data to point to, maybe not with things like Hinge. I think Hinge is trying to be slightly better, although I still think Hinge plays all the tricks that Tinder does. So in my opinion, Tinder plays all sorts of tricks on you. They front load the attractive people. They just, the stupid feature of where you can like put your location to anywhere. I mean, like, what kind of a feature is that? What people sort of have to understand is that the fundamental purpose of an app is to get people to use the app. It goes in the hierarchy of sort of importance. At the top is people using the app, and then below that is actually the purpose of the app. It isn't the other way around. It's not the purpose of the app and then people using it. People are using it has to be the top. So all these sort of dopaminergically intertwined tricks and gimmicks that they play on us. So
exactly.
I think
if I can just jump in there as well, it's like what you were saying. You said a lot of really good points in there as well, because it's like when you're saying it's people using the app on that, with that perspective, it's like they're a business and they're really wanting to make money from it. So it's like you can see it from their point of view, but then their purpose of the app and the function. I love that you say that you believe dating apps are on the way out, because I think a lot of people are becoming more aware of that it's not actually giving them the result or the end result that they originally got on the app for necessarily. But I do love what you said, how the roots are going so deep, so it may not necessarily disappear. But I believe that the reason why the roots are going so deep is because at the end of the day, we are humans and we are wanting connection and we're all wanting love, whether we admit it or not. It's like we are wanting that connection. So we are going on these dating apps, and within saying that, we're wanting these connections, and at the same time, we're realizing we're not getting a quality connection most of the time now on these dating apps, whether we're not matching with anyone really because of the quality of like how many people are not swiping to match with a person, that they're actually wanting to have a proper, deeper connection. And they find that when they actually have a coffee date or they run into someone in person. And so that's why I can see people getting off the dating apps to have that human interaction, because they're actually getting that depth of connection. But they still will have a hope of finding that connection and love through a dating app as well, even if it's not giving them that result.
It speaks to a sort of bigger societal sort of issue and dilemma, which is the option of like monogamy and polygamy and things like Tinder and things like that massively promote, as you said earlier, it's sort of, they promote this small percentage of men, because this is actually biologically the way that the human species has always been set up in its natural. It's a perfect example of these sorts of paradoxical ways of being, where we're sort of designed for monogamy in a sense of a psychological grounding and familial, what would you say, conducive to a familial upkeep and the sort of the invent and the nourishing of children. But then there's also this sort of immature, non-integrated part of us which maybe does seek a bit more polygamy. But the thing about dating apps is they tend to facilitate a small percentage of men receiving all the female attention, and then a large percentage receiving none of the female attention. And that is there's so much data now that point to how monogamy is very stabilizing for a society. And there's, I think, going back to the idea of the roots of monogamy, when they're firmly grounded in a society does so much better. There's less domestic violence. There's less. I mean, just there's a myriad of reasons why polygamy. Is it polygamy or is it polyamory? One of them. Either way, what's your opinion on? Obviously, you've gone down you're obviously a very, very attractive woman. You could decide, right, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to sort of string it out for as long as I possibly can. But you've met this fake Welsh guy, and you've gone, no, we're gonna have a baby, and this is what I'm going to do. And you've made a very mature, and it isn't. I think I'm framing it in a way that you definitely chose the better option, and I'm sure that you chose a better option, and I know that you chose a better option. But where is my question in this rabble? Yeah, I suppose, what's your opinion on the sort of promiscuity?
So interesting. I love this question. Yeah, there's a lot of different topics that we covered in there, like so many good points I'd love to dive into. Okay. So with monogamy within itself, I do love how you did back that. It's like, as a society, we can see that being in a monogamous relationship, you do get to build a whole another level of depth that you will not experience in a polyamorous relationship, or where you are dating multiple people and not in a committed relationship at all whatsoever. So there's a level of depth that you're going to miss within life. And the reason why having multiple different partners or dating multiple different people and never being locked down into a relationship, the reason why that seems so exciting is because you're constantly getting these dopamine hits, right? It's like we live in a society where dopamine is everywhere, through the food that we eat, from what we consume on social media or television, that it's with when you're in a relationship or you're getting to meet someone new, you don't actually know that person. So they are fulfilling all these fantasies that you're having inside your head because you don't know that person yet. You're getting to know them. So they have that potential to fulfill everything that you've ever desired. And you're just getting to know them more and more in hopes that they're fulfilling each desire. And then you realize that they're also a person, and they also have issues, and they also have problems, and they're probably not always going to fulfill all those desires and that fantasy that you have in your head. So then you just go to the next person and to the next person. And a lot of people are doing this so unconsciously, and they're in such a pattern of it now that they're just in this loop of excitement, and they're not recognizing that the excitement is the fact that you don't know that person. The fact that you can be intimate with a person and not know their soul yet. And so they can still be this fantasy, and you get to pretend that they are this fantasy for you because you don't know their soul. And so then there's a whole nother level of depth when you choose to commit to one person and build that depth, because then you get to know who they are for all they are. And there's a level of trust that you have to have within yourself to be able to go that deep with someone. Because if you're with someone, or you meet one of your friends that are constantly dating many, many different people throughout their lifetime or back to back, it's because there is a part of them that they're scared of going deep. They're scared to see themselves on a deeper level, because your relationship is the biggest mirror for yourself. It's like your relationship is going to trigger parts of you that you've pretended isn't there. Like my partner will trigger parts of me and I'll show up and I'll be angry. But I'm like, I'm not an angry person. Like if I met any of my friends, I would never say that I was angry. But being in a committed relationship where someone sees me for all of me actually triggers that. And then that comes up. I'm like, oh, I've been pretending that I didn't have that part to me, but I actually do. And for my partner to mirror that back to me, to be like, okay, that's actually something that I need to work on. And so when you're looking at these polyamorous relationships, it's actually them not wanting to go to that depth. And some disagree, but however, I can promise you that is actually what's happening. Because, sorry, you can go.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's a brilliantly well articulated. There was a famous psychologist called Carl Jung, and he came up with the concept of the anima and the animus, and the anima is the feminine aspect of a male mind, and the animus is the masculine aspect of a female mind, of a woman's mind. And he believed that, particularly with men, one of the reasons that they can stereotypically be terrified of speaking to, approaching women is because when they see someone they're incredibly attracted to, they don't actually see that person. They see their ideal overlaid onto that person, and therefore in Sleeping Beauty, the original Sleeping Beauty, before the prince, and obviously that whole sort of sector of that epoch of Disney has been defamed a lot recently, which is really wrong actually, and that's a whole other thing to talk about anyway. But anyway, the prince has to slay, so to speak, the dragon of chaos, and there's as you know, like all these exceptionally deep archetypal things, there's a plethora of sort of reasoning behind what that's trying to show. But what it's partly trying to show is a man's necessity to overcome his possible fear of women in general, but also a woman when they're trying to approach and sort of kindle a relationship. And I think it's part of the reason, there's so many reasons this, why stereotypically particularly younger women tend to go for the wrong sort of men. They can go for sort of narcissistic men, and it's because there's so many reasons, but one of the reasons I think is because in that dichotomy that I was just sort of laying out with the dragon of chaos, which is kind of like the toxic feminine, in other words, they're looking for that masculine that is capable of handling the toxic part of themselves, and they often look at sort of men that come across as maybe too meek or too kind, as you can't handle the world, because the feminine is chaos, and chaos is kind of represented as the world in general. So A, you can't handle the world, and B, you can't handle me. One of the things that I've noticed, like if you're in a nightclub, I think when a girl has been interested in me, sometimes they'll sort of initiate like a bit of a quasi fight, not like a physical fight, but they'll be a bit sort of argumentative, and I'll be like, whoa, what's going on here? And I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to initiate that battle, so to speak, in a controlled manner, because they're testing you, and they're trying to see what you can do. And I completely lost what my first original point was. What was it?
That's okay. I was going to say, that's absolutely correct. Because like, as a woman, I feel like it's almost an unnatural, not unnatural, sorry. It is such a natural, like unconscious behavior, because I've even done that in the past before I really delve deep into the relationships and like why women and men do certain things. But you're 100% correct of like, sometimes women will like bait you just to like try and trigger you to see how you can control that situation. because it's like overall women naturally are wanting to be protected and just like want that man or like masculine man, whatever that looks like, to be able to feel protected and safe. And I feel like in this world, it's very subconscious now happening because there's a lot of like independent women. However, what I find with independent women, especially who are self-labeled independent, and the independent woman, I don't need no man, is actually them insecure about how they've been treated in the past and feel so unsafe to be themselves or to be vulnerable with anyone else, that they have so many massive walls built up that won't allow any man in or any friends in, even on a deeper level, because they're so scared of being hurt that they show up so strong and so independent and verbally say it. But if you really get to understand their behaviors and what's actually happening, is that they feel so insecure and unsafe. And then when a strong masculine man comes in, strong just meaning like energetically strong to be able to hold them and protect them, then you'll actually realize that they step more into their light feminine energy and actually surrender to that.